which is text 43. So 328, 43. 328, 43. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udirayat Vayonisho Yata Jyotir Ekam Nana Pratiyate Yoni Nam Guna Vaishamyat Tatatma Prakritau Stitaha Svajonisho Yata Jyotir Ekam Nana Pratiyate Yoninam Gunavaisham Yat Tatatma Prakritau Stitaha. As fires exhibit in different forms of wood, so, under different conditions of the modes of material nature, the pure spirit soul manifests itself in different bodies. Purport. It is to be understood that the body is designated. Interesting language. Prakriti is an interaction of the three modes of material nature, and according to these modes, someone has a small body, someone has a very large body. For example, the fire in a big piece of wood appears very big. In a stick, the fire appears small. Actually, the quality of fire is the same everywhere, but the manifestation of material nature is such that according to the fuel, the fire appears bigger and smaller. Similarly, the soul in the universal body, although of the same quality, is different from the soul in the smaller body. Paragraph. The small particles of soul are just like sparks of the larger soul. The greatest soul is the super soul. But the super soul is quantitatively different from the small soul. The super soul is described in the Vedic literature as the supplier of all necessities of the smaller soul. Nityo Nityanam. One who understands this distinction between the super soul and the individual soul is above lamentation and is in a peaceful position. When the smaller soul thinks himself quantitatively as big as the larger soul, he is under the spell of Maya, for that is not his constitutional position. No one can become the greater soul simply by mental speculation. Paragraph. The smallness or greatness of different souls is described in the Varaha Purana as Svangsha Viminangsha. The Svangsha soul is the supreme personality of Godhead, and the Vibhinangsha souls, or small particles, are eternally small particles, as confirmed in Bhagavad Gita. Mavivangsho Jiva Loke Jiva Bhuta Sanatanaha. The small living entities are eternally part and parcel, and therefore it is not possible for them to be quantitatively as great as the supersoul. Now, the context, going back to where this conversation between Kapila and Devahuti began, is Devahuti is requesting her son, who she knows to be Vishnu. Imagine having Vishnu as your son. She's taking shelter of him for instruction how to overcome her affinity for matter, specifically her attachment to the feelings of absence from her husband, the father of Kapila, Karavuni. And we discussed this. She's taking the position as if she's one of us, but she's not one of us. But she's taking the position like that. Very practical. It's not like she knows that she's being recorded and it's going to be in a book or something like that. Just that's her position of humility. So the person that's taking the position of humility may think of themselves and act in such a way that they're not so elevated. That's a natural feature of spiritual elevation. We'll see it the other way. Spiritual elevation is characterized by profound humility. Yeah, the other way. One who is proud is not spiritually elevated. And what is one proud of? A list of things. Janma, Aishwara, Shuta, Shri, for starters, and then subdivisions and combinations. And one may be proud. Or Prabhupada's language, don't become puffed up over borrowed plumes. So an ostrich or some other bird may have some very colorful and fancy looking feathers. You put the feather in your cap and you think, but it's a borrowed plume, it's not yours. So what are you proud of, sir or madam? The non-proud person or the humble person recognizes whatever there are decorations upon me, where they come from. What's there to be proud of? It's a bestowal of something from someone, some source, but more specifically a person. And so my smallness is recognizing the greatness of the source. And recognizing the greatness of the source, there's this humility, and there's also service to the great. Humility in proportion to Svangsa and Vibhinangsa. The Vibhinangsa, the tiny, in relation to the great. So I'm looking up to the great because I'm tiny. And that's the humility, and it's not just feeling lowly, but it's service to the great. Not, so in other words, humility, it's one of these things. Humility is not low self-esteem. Humility is recognizing the great and how tiny I am in comparison to the great. Now, as a key sentence, I'll read it again. I hope you noticed it. One who understands this is free from lamentation. I'll read the sentence. One who understands this distinction between the super soul and the individual soul is above lamentation and is in a peaceful position. Now, the position is peaceful, although the circumstance may be turbulent. If we identify with circumstance, then we're not going to be peaceful, because the nature of this material Prakriti, it's a place of duality. And as much as we want it to be like this, it may sometimes appear to be like this and then shift and appear to be something else, then appear to be something else, then appear to be something else. And it's just the nature of the place. So the peaceful position is to not wish the place to be according to my dictation or to my preferences. Peaceful is to recognize my position in relation to the Supreme. And the principle, as it's described here, is quite simple. Who could deny? A foolish person can deny, but a thoughtful person cannot deny. Just yesterday evening, one of the verses from Canto 1, Chapter 1, verse number 2, 112 Bhagavatam, is the highest truth. This is just taken pretty much cut and paste from 112. The highest truth is that which distinguishes reality from illusion for the welfare of all. And such knowledge relieves one from the threefold miseries. Now, there's misery. Not like you have that knowledge of the message of the Srimad Bhagavatam, and it doesn't get cold. And when it gets cold, you feel cold, or you feel something. Whatever's going on. Sensory apparatus is still working. The mind is registering. Oh, it's cold. The intelligence is assessing. Here's something you can do to counteract the cold. You put on some warmer clothes. We don't dress like this in the summer. But when it's cold, so you identify the duality feature at the moment, and it changes and changes and changes, and it can't stop it changing because it changes. It's fluid, very, very ever-changing, unstable, chanchala. The mind is unstable, the circumstances, the senses, the happiness and distress, it's all unstable. And to happiness isn't the configuration, then the bell rings, and now that's happiness. Yay. That's not happiness. It may appear to be happiness, that's Maya. That's illusion. Reality distinguished from illusion is the highest truth. The highest truth, not as opposed to a lie distinct from the truth, but that which is the source of everything, that kind of truth, the absolute truth. The Bhagavatam delivers, Kapila Deva is delivering to Devahuti the absolute truth. And one who becomes fixed in the absolute truth is peaceful. One more time. The circumstance may be disturbing. But disturbing for whom? And how long is it going to be disturbing for? And what's non-disturbance? If that's disturbing, the absence of disturbance is suicide, nihilism. You stop experiencing, you become numb, you become anesthetized. And the disturbance stops. The disturbance doesn't stop. Your sensitivity stops. And so that's peacefulness, is being anesthetized or dying, committing spiritual suicide. But there's no spiritual suicide because the soul is eternal. So, any door you try to walk through to get away from disturbances, it's a losing proposition. Then is there? And the explanation given in Kapila's instructions in devotional service is devotional service. In devotional service, has a foundation. I'm tiny. God is great. I should serve him. And then the mind goes to him. The senses go to him. The desire for happiness goes to him. And that's the position of peacefulness, where there's no longer the disturbance of lamentation. Now, most of us aren't there yet. And so we experience the duality, the happiness and distress and lamentation and, the negative emotion thing. It came up yesterday, how to deal with negative emotions. The yoga teacher, how do you deal with, she didn't say it bluntly like that, but that was the nature of the question. My answer was, the best way of dealing with negative emotions is not have any. And then the positive emotion of, I'm connected with the Supreme. And then go way down to the beginning of Bhagavad Gita instruction. As you tolerate you do X, Y, Z. If it's cold, you dress warmly. But even you dress warmly, it's not. What's the position of being comfortable? And in this body, there's no such thing, because it's always changing. Comfortable for a moment, and then it's changing. Asat. The happiness is dukkha instead of sukha, and it's ashashvatam. It's impermanent. So, a thoughtful person says, you know what? I should find happiness somewhere else. But how to withdraw consciousness from the expectation of happiness in the temporary? We're addicted. We're attached, or stay stronger. We're addicted. We're addicted. Sign up. Be honest with yourself. There's an addiction to searching for happiness in the field of the temporary. And that's a measure of how well you're doing, or how well things are going, or how well you're doing in your bhakti life. Is the temporary happiness seems to rise, and the misery seems to subside. And that's a measure of progress in spiritual life. That's not a measure of progress in spiritual life. I mean, those things may happen or may not happen. But it's not the measure of progress in spiritual life. And that was another question. How do you measure progress in spiritual life? There's good questions yesterday. And, conscious perception, there was a statement on the screen. Perception is determined by our level of consciousness. Just that statement. So how is one to determine one's level of consciousness? Next, we're not Shuddha, and then what's this? Levels of consciousness, modes of nature. And the perception and goodness is this, perception and passions. Perception, a consciousness is influenced by, strongly influenced by, conditioned by the modes of nature. So it's not just by directing your life to the mode of goodness, that's happiness, or that is higher consciousness. It's less covered consciousness, in that sense, relatively higher, but that's not what consciousness is. It's not who we are. It's not self-realization. It's not what real happiness is, or what real peacefulness is. So the purport has been reduced. The verse and purport have been reduced to very simple terms. And the comparison, go back to the verse, is fire within wood. Now, what Prabhupada has done in the purport is a big piece of wood and a small piece of wood. Big fire, small fire, but it's fire. But then there's also different kinds of wood or different kinds of fuel emanate different kinds of fire. But, the essence of fire is not this kind versus that kind. Fire is fire. So he didn't go there. But, some flames are of this color and that color and this intensity and that intensity and so forth. And so leaving all of that diversity aside, fire is fire. Then there's big and small, because that's the emphasis of the purport, or where he draws. So there's big fire, small fire. We're the small fire, and Krishna is the big fire, or super soul, the big fire. And the small in relation to the big, it's not just knowledge. Knowledge alone is not enough. With that knowledge, then what? I mean, it all points to bhakti. For the person that actually has knowledge, what does Krishna say? Bahunam janmanam ante ganavan mam prapadyate. Vasudev sarvamiti samahatma. It's very rare to find somebody that knows and they live their life that way. Namely, they take full shelter in service of the personality of Godhead. So, we have somehow or other, our life has been made fortunate. We're coming from different backgrounds. Some of them may be similar, some of them may be very dissimilar backgrounds. But there's the sameness is we're very fortunate because we're victims of the age of Kali, misguided, unfortunate, always disturbed, etc. Age of quarrel, hypocrisy. It's not a nice time in the cycles of time. And we're all victims of the time and circumstance. And somehow our lives have been made fortunate. Not only we have the answer that the verse 1:1:2, and this knowledge, this truth, uproots the threefold miseries. Not just knowledge, but the Bhagavad Dharma uproots the threefold miseries. What are the threefold miseries? Adhyatmika, Adidaivika, Adibhautika. When it's identical. When Sanatana Goswami had the opportunity to approach Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he did so in abject humility, profound humility, and he asked two questions: who am I, and why am I forced to suffer the threefold miseries? We don't want, but they come. Why? The why question. We're under the influence of. How we become under the influence of. And how do we correct that? The misuse of free will problem is proper use of free will, and the proper use of free will has to be directed, ultimately directed by bhakti. Not just make good choices and don't make bad choices. Be a person, a virtuous person instead of a wicked person or unregulated person. So we do the regulated and apply the principles of Dharma or principles of virtue to our lives, but it doesn't stop there. If it stops there, then it's not stable. It's not what real happiness is. It's not the purpose of the Vedas. The follower of the Vedas is one who knows Krishna, and how to know Krishna through bhakti. And bhakti has the power to, back to the verse in purport, to dismiss lamentation and illusion. Or it uproots the threefold miseries. Not just dials them down, but uproots them, from the very root. The material conception is at the root, but it's not just identifying with matter, it's forgetting our eternal relationship with Krishna, which is the consequence of it is being in the material world, identifying with the material world. All paths lead to Krishna. And all the little paths lead to the big path. The big path is the bhakti path. And, it's easy to understand it if you have a Krishna conscious teacher and teaching, and that's the Bhagavatam. And reading it, understanding it, discussing it, living it is so important. It's meant to bring real happiness in the lives of people that don't even know what real happiness is, what to speak of experiencing it. So we're very fortunate. At least the opportunity is there. And then take advantage of it. It's rare. As again, Krishna confirms, very rare. Vasudev sarvam iti. Vasudev is everything. Samahatma sudurlabha. The Bhagavatam is giving us that opportunity. Please take it. And the acharyas are the messengers of Krishna. Please take it. But it's Krishna's call, and they're just the instrument of Krishna's call. It's pretty bold. Just read Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna is saying it's about me. Those whose lives are surrendered unto me, who are always their minds are fixed in me, and it's like me. That's, sounds arrogant, but it's not arrogant. It's truth. And if it's not singular, then it's the material position. There's many. Not one. It's not singular. It's not focused. Or I can take some other kind of center than Krishna and call that the center. But mamekam sharanam. Exclusive. And that's the platform of peace and happiness. And we're not there yet. So we have sadhana to help us get there. And do your sadhana attentively. Part of our sadhana is hearing Srimad Bhagavatam daily, so we're doing that. Let's see if there's some discussion. Krishna, Krishna. Yeah.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. First I'm reflecting back first and then a question, Maharaj. So I like how you explained when I understand my real position in relation to Krishna, how small I am and how Krishna is great. That is a real humility. And then how that should lead to service to Krishna.
Yeah.
And that should lead to a mood of pleasing him always.
Yeah.
Then I'm not thinking about pleasing myself or my body like that. I really like that explanation about how bhakti is the essence. In this verse, one angle Prabhupada emphasized is about how we're qualitatively same as Krishna, but quantitatively small.
Mm.
I'm connecting with the other topic we're discussing in the evenings, Vaishnava etiquette. So in that sense, all of us, you talked about how we need to see spiritual beyond the behavior, how hate the sinner, not sin, not the sinner, like that. So in that sense, also this very helpful message, wherein I'm seeing everybody is a spirit soul. Everybody has the same potential like fire to grow big fire. Like everybody has a potential to go into bhakti. So if I see that, but then the behavior and whatever they're exhibiting now is just a covering in a small wood. They're there currently like that. That means they're not exhibiting the natural constitutional position currently. If I see that, then I can potentially see equality between the spirits. Equality spiritual vision, is that one aspect of spiritual vision?
Oh, yes, sure.
Yeah. And then,
There's coverings that are different in different degrees and different shades, different colors, and that's not the person, but we can just see the distinctions, and then a Vaishnava can, according to Shastra, can see the distinctions and what's what. The grades of consciousness, for example, from yesterday, modes of nature. But then beyond the modes of nature was animating and activating Prakriti as the soul. No, you're just looking for confirmation. Something else? All the way in the back.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. My question is like, you said like when the disturbances arise and instead of, my experience has been instead of going on to the path of humility, it is more of like, I want to manage the situation or taking control. And also when it comes to planning, of course, practically seeing certain things we foresee and we want to plan. And I'm unable to see how it's more of me doing things.
More of me doing things.
Yes, Maharaj, especially the planning when it comes to that. I'm still, I'm trying to control things. That's what I see myself. So not bringing in the real humility practically. So how to handle that, man?
The problem is not making a plan. I mean, here we are, for example, we had a plan. We're going to have a Bhagavatam class starting at 7 a.m. So we all came. And some persons may be online, but so that's a plan. But something may interrupt the plan. So it's not planning in itself is bad. Being attached to I am the creator of the plan and therefore should be the way that I planned it, that's problematic. So step back. It's the consciousness behind the making of a plan that makes all the difference between is something wholesome or detrimental. The plan is Krishna's service. I mean, that's ideal. It's just for Krishna's pleasure. So our founder Acharya gave us the system of hearing Bhagavatam daily, so we're following him to make a plan according to his. And then supposing something happens. Sometimes something happens. The plan doesn't happen the way we planned it. So that we have arrangements of Krishna even in the midst of having a plan that may be working or not working. And then, making adjustments with the plan. There's nothing wrong with making adjustments according to time, place, circumstance. But the adjusting is wholesome or not, depending upon the consciousness behind it. In other words, spiritualize everything. And then you're not at the center. You're the servant, but there's the served. And the served is at the center. After class, most of us, probably all of us, will be breakfast. And there has to be a plan. The breakfast isn't just going to cook itself or something. There has to be a plan. And something anyway, so the question is not, should I have breakfast or not? Should I have a plan to have breakfast or not? There's nothing wrong with making a plan, but what's the consciousness behind the plan? Who is at the center? Now, I know devotees who they're at the center. They're devotees. It's Krishna, 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 and they're at the center. And you point out to them that tendency that they're at the center. They can't hear it. They don't want to hear it. They're deaf. Krishna's at the center for them, as far as they're concerned. But it's not, it's blatantly obvious to everybody, or at least most people, except that person. So, there is a risk. It's called material consciousness. But do anything. Then the answer is do nothing, don't have a plan. Kesara, Sara, whatever will be, will be. Row, row, row your boat. No plan. That's not what's pleasing to Krishna. So then back to the question, how to execute the duties of life where I'm not at the center. One solution, Krishna is the center. What does that look like? Then we have Shastra to give us clues of examples and precepts. And we're not there yet, so we go in the direction of what Shastra says, the example and precept. And then practice and cultivate, knowing that I'm not there yet. But practice. And good association. Oh, this is the same kind of how-to kind of question, just asked in a different way. Someone else? Yes.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. I have two clarifications. So the first one, what I understood, I'm connecting to yesterday, what we discussed about knowing Maya and how powerful is Maya. So I'm just trying to connect to Vyasadeva's realization that he mentions in the first canto. So if we understand who we are and how great the Lord is, and then we will be able to see how Maya also influences on us. Is that the right way?
Well, not exactly, because you're putting the cart before the horse. When I can see this and that, then I can understand how Maya is working. Which comes first, the chicken or the egg? So it's like the cultivation of bhakti is the process, and by executing the process, the obstacles blocking my realization of the goal will gradually be clear, gradually, and then eventually dissipated by the mercy of Krishna and the bhakti process itself. Take the way that you said it. I'm stuck. because I don't have this realization and of myself and Krishna, and therefore I'm covered by Maya, so I'm stuck. And I can't understand because I'm covered by Maya. Your question was, is this correct? Is this premise correct? And I'm saying not exactly. Something else?
Second.
What?
I have second clarification.
Okay.
So, one thing that you mentioned about Bhagavatam,
About?
second verse, Vastavam atra vastu. Reality
Yeah.
distinguishment.
Yeah.
So maybe when I'm hearing or reading Bhagavatam, maybe I heard from you multiple times, my consciousness also goes to that verse to see that verse with that lens, how this is helping
How this is?
this verse or what the message it's conveyed in that verse, helping me to understand that the fact that it is mentioned in verse 2.
Yeah.
Is that the correct way?
Well, it sounds correct. I don't.
Because recently we were reading Bharat Maharaja story, and at the Falastuti, the last verse, it says, if one attentively hears, and this story of Bharat Maharaja, they achieve whatever they desire. And Prabhupada says that it could be spiritual or it could be heavenly planet or something like that. So when I connect with second verse, Bhagavatam is not destined to give anything material. So maybe I'm not connecting correctly, so I just wanted clarification.
That 112 statement is the ultimate, and then there's stages before the ultimate, but you stay with it, and the ultimate evolves, or the potency, the potential is there for the ultimate. Reality distinguished from illusion, the threefold miseries are dissipated. So that's how the two statements compare. And they're Prabhupada's purport. It can be this, can be this, can be this, proportionate to or commensurate to or according to our acceptance of that message of the Bhagavatam, or the message of the Absolute Truth, or Bhagavad Dharma. And there's degrees of the effect upon the hearer and the practitioner. But the potency is there to go all the way. And we'll experience the potency more or less, depending. Okay.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. So I was actually had some. I'm not able to understand when you said about like the senses actually trying to take the cold, the example that you have given, and at the same time, like once after it derives the sense perspective of the coldness from the climate, intelligence is trying to say that like a solution like to cover or some solution. And next you mentioned that like freezing of that senses is actually trying to be like a suicide, a spiritual suicide. So, and that I do not able to understand, like to connect to the words. Like, can you able to elaborate on that?
Which verse? I'm not clear what your
Today's one only.
Huh?
Today's only, Maharaj. When you explain about that, right? You brought up the example of climate.
Yeah.
And from the
Climate
climate when we
changes.
are actually derive this coldness from the sense perspective.
Yes, that's right.
And that will give that give a kick off to the intelligence, and it will try to give a solution to us.
Try to give what to us?
Solution, like to
Solution.
to avoid the coldness.
Okay.
And
That's the standard.
yeah,
They're extremists that they deliberately, when it's cold, they go to the coldest place. When it's hot, they build fires around.
yeah,
They scorch the senses, parch the senses. That's extreme sense of austerity. But back to generally speaking, we look for solutions to problems. A little bit like the plan making. Go ahead.
and after that you mentioned like freezing of the senses to take that coldness is like a spiritual suicide. You
Yeah.
mentioned. So
You make
I'm-
yourself like a stone. You don't feel anything. And anesthetized, I used the word. That the soul can't be killed, but consciousness can be covered to an extreme degree, like anesthesia. There's a soul within a body, and they administer anesthesia, and you can cut the body, and they don't feel pain. Correct?
yeah,
So, and then when the anesthesia wears off, oh, it's painful. So it's like death. It's like death. Anesthetized state is like death. So to try to be neutral, absolutely neutral, not just tolerant or indifferent, but absolutely neutral. So that a self-realized soul can experience pain. Bhishma Dev experienced pain, but his consciousness was somewhere else. But it's not like he didn't know that there was arrows in his body, or etc. So back to you didn't understand the point I made. If one tries to just deny the existence of pain or pleasure, it's not true. It's false. It's imagination only. So there's unless consciousness is so covered that it's just so dull that it's like dead. Like dead, but the souls aren't dead, ever. Did it address your question?
yes.
Okay. See the Prabhupada ki jai.